Pope Francis died earlier this Easter Monday after leading the Roman Catholic Church for 12 years as the Bishop of Rome. A native of Argentina, he was formerly known as Cardinal Jorge Maria Bergoglio, ascending to the papacy after the retirement of Benedict XVI in 2013, thereby becoming the first pontiff from Latin America and the first Jesuit pope of the Catholic Church. As tributes poured in from around the world, including at the United Nations, where the Security Council observed a moment of silence.
I wish to pay tribute to His Holiness Pope Francis, the first pontiff of the South Emissary. Pope Francis spoke for and championed peace, human dignity, and empathy vis-à-vis the destitute. We extend our sincerest condolences to all persons who have been inspired by his mission, by his example throughout the world.
The UN chief later also offering words of sympathy.
Extend my deepest condolences to Catholics and all those around the world inspired by the extraordinary life and example of His Holiness Pope Francis. Pope Francis was a messenger of hope, humility, and humanity. He was a transcendent voice for peace, human dignity, and social justice. He leaves behind a legacy of faith, service, and compassion for all, especially those on the margins of life or trapped by the horrors of conflict.
Pope Francis visited UN headquarters in September 2015, addressing the General Assembly, where he took a firm stance in a call for greater equality in the organization, particularly organs like the Security Council.
The need for greater equity is especially true in the case of those bodies with effective executive capabilities such as the Security Council, the financial agencies, and the groups or mechanisms which were specifically created to deal with economic crises.
He also likened harm to the environment as harm against humanity, urging UN member states to ensure the uncontested rule of law, calling on them to dismantle nuclear weapons and to avoid wars between nations and peoples.
These realities should serve as a grave summons to an examination of conscience on the part of those charged with the conduct of international affairs, and not only in cases of religious or cultural persecution, but in every situation of conflict, as in Ukraine, Syria, Iraq, Libya, South Sudan, and the Great Lakes region. Real human beings take precedence over partisan interests, however legitimate the latter may be.
Views echoed by the UN chief, a decade after the late pontiff spoke in this building.
Through the years, we at the United Nations were greatly inspired by his commitment to the goals and ideals of our organization, a message I was honored to convey in my meetings with him as Secretary General. Pope Francis also understood that protecting our common home is at heart a deeply moral mission, a responsibility that belongs to every person. Many of us find great meaning in his final Easter message delivered just yesterday. He appealed for us not to yield, as he called it, to the logic of fear. Instead, he urged the world to invest in what he referred to as the weapons of peace, to help the most vulnerable, to fight hunger, to advance development. Our divided and discordant world will be a much better place if we follow his example of unity and mutual understanding in our own actions.
Short message on social media, US President Donald Trump wrote, "Rest in peace, Pope Francis. May God bless him and all who loved him." And Barack Obama called him a rare leader who made us all want to be better people, who shook us out of our complacency and reminded us that we are all bound by moral obligations to God and one another. Of State Hillary Clinton cited Pope Francis's last public address, in which he preached care for the marginalized, the vulnerable, and migrants, adding, "May we heed his wish."
We're choreograph our own birth or death, can't we? That's always in God's hands. But if you could choreograph it, You couldn't choreograph it any better than what happened. The last time we saw him, Easter Sunday, the last words, a blessed Easter, as he gave us his blessing. You couldn't, the day that we believe Jesus rose from the dead and shares that victory with us, in which we trust by divine mercy, Pope Francis now shares in abundance. You couldn't have choreographed it better, and we thank him for that. The way he lived and the way he died, he was a great teacher.
Dolan also praised Pope Francis's humility and simplicity. His passing to now be followed by 9 days of mourning, with the date of the funeral to be decided by cardinals, normally 4 to 6 days after his death. And the detailed choreography at the Vatican now begins to play out. Pope Francis will lie in state, likely beginning on Wednesday, where hundreds of thousands of people are expected to pay their respects at St. Peter's Basilica in Vatican City. About a week after his funeral, the conclave of cardinals will gather at the Sistine Chapel to elect the 267th head of the Catholic Church. Pope Francis was 88. Sherwin Bryce-Pease, SABC News, New York.